So today we're talking with Kevin Hoban and Jordy Simkovic, the creators and starring characters of Captain and Cat, a popular YouTube kids show with 200,000 subscribers and over 200 million views. The educational show for preschoolers tells stories using entertaining songs and narratives. They've just launched a new series called Explorasaurus, Healthy Food and You, aimed at teaching kids about healthy food and how it's grown. Their first episode about sugar bee apple growers in Washington State has over 500,000 views on YouTube. You guys must be used to these numbers, but they're really pretty impressive.
Thank you. Honestly, I'm impressed just hearing our stats. That's kind of cool, this thing. It's cool to hear.
You deserve to be proud of this.
Thank you.
So anyway, the goal of this is to help parents get their kids to eat well by making healthy foods fun. Welcome to the Leading Voices in Food podcast. I'm Kelly Brownell of Duke University. It's a real pleasure to have you both with us, and I'm really eager to dive in. So again, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
We're really excited.
All right, so for people who aren't familiar with your show, for those few people out there who may not be, tell us about Captain and Cat, the characters, what they do, and how did you guys get started doing this?
Got you. Well, Jordan and I have been best friends since college. We went to Northwestern University in Chicago, and we were in a band together. We would perform live on campus in the streets, and we realized that kids would stop and really enjoyed what we were doing. And I think that was the seed of the whole thing was, hey, maybe our act that we have, this two-man show, is something for kids. And then we graduated. We both moved out to LA. Jordan came out here to act. I moved out here to produce TV shows. And on the weekends, we started performing for kids.
Yeah, actually, we did a show called The Bubble Show, and we were doing probably 6 to 8 shows a weekend for about 10 years. And then during the pandemic, we started putting our stuff online because all live performances stopped. And for about 3 years, it was nothing and crickets and really just our parents watching. And then we won the award for Best Kid Song of the Year in 2023. And then that kind of put us on the radar of YouTube Kids, who invited us to be one of the featured channels on their platform. And so for a while, we were doing jingles and music and educational songs and stuff like that. And then towards the end of last summer, we had connected with Sugar Bee Apples and that whole kind of growing cooperative out there about doing an apple song. And they actually were like, you know what would be even cooler than that? Why don't you come out here and meet the farmers and see the harvest in action? And we're like, whoa, this is really cool. And honestly, it was a life-changing experience. We now say that we have aunts, uncles, and cousins out in Central Washington. And honestly, I grew up in Miami. I went to college in Chicago, and then I lived in Los Angeles ever since. I had never stepped foot on a farm, really, in any significant way. And just to be able to get exposure to this incredible pocket of people that otherwise I would have never had a chance to see and meet was completely eye-opening.
I would say I went out there thinking, this is a huge apple company. They sell them all across the country in every grocery store. I went out there thinking, well, this is sort of like a big industrial corporate farm, right? It must be just one giant farm with robots harvesting apples. And what we found was it was a co-op of family-owned farms, smaller families. We met the families, we met the grandparents, the parents, the kids, the grandkids, and we learned so much about apples and how you grow them that every apple is picked by hand, first and foremost.
We honestly expected there was going to be like a machine just going around and shaking the apples off, you know, because you have no idea. And there's been so much dialogue around factory farming, which has become kind of like the negative word. And honestly, yeah, as Kevin was saying, we expected just a giant faceless corporation there. And it was the exact opposite.
Can I ask you guys a question? I'd like to dive in a little deeper than this because you're saying something that resonates with me very personally. When I moved to North Carolina from Connecticut, I was offered the opportunity through the North Carolina Farm Bureau to do a tour of farms, 2-day intensive tour of farms in eastern North Carolina. And we went to a blueberry farm that harvests millions of pounds of blueberries a year, soybeans, corn, hog farmers, chicken. I mean, we did everything, and it was incredibly interesting. And there was the technology part of it, or the lack of technology that I was learning about, just as you related. But there was also a very moving human part of this. The people, I thought, were really interesting, and the generational nature of farming and all. So tell me a little bit more about the people part of it and how much that affected you.
We met the farmer who, like 7 generations back, their family introduced the Granny Smith apple to the United States. You know, it goes back, and we literally see it's a whole family working and living very close to where they farm. And so kind of just, it's Uncle Farmer Peoples now, you know? And so we were kind of talking to him about chemicals and pesticides and stuff like that off the record. Because we're like, all right, so now tell us how much he's spraying on these. He's like, why would I ever do anything destructive to this land? This is where my family and I live.
Yeah. And I think you also picked up on the pressure that these farmers feel to carry on the farm itself. It's been in their family for generations. They need to keep it running, and all of the pressures and anxieties that come with that just to keep this farm afloat. Because again, it's not some huge corporation. It's a family farm that's part of this co-op of other family farms, and they've all kind of banded together to pool their resources to keep everything going, which is just a wonderful lesson, I think. These farms rely on people working together day in and day out for their own collective good.
The guy who runs the packaging facility is the brother-in-law of one of the growers. So we thought that they were pranking us because literally every car that drove by, they're like, oh, that's my brother-in-law. Oh, that's my aunt. That's my niece. In this little town right off of Lake Chelan, and you really see the impact. We actually were just there last week again to film a new segment about apple blossoms and pollination and stuff like that. And one of the coolest experience we had there was we went to an elementary school. One of the families in the co-op had donated shoes to a lot of the kids in the elementary school, and we helped go distribute them there. So it's honestly so cool to see that the same way that LA is built around the film industry, they're literally built around the apple and cherry industry and pears. Ever since we went there, I, off camera, you would not catch me eating anything other than a sugar beet. And that's the truth.
You know, so interesting to hear you talk about this and your experience with the apple production facility and the people being related to one another. It's exactly what I found on a sweet potato farm here. North Carolina is the largest producer of sweet potatoes, and I visited a very large farm owned by a man and his daughter. I mean, they really ran this business, and they were farmers at their heart, but this was $100 million a year business, and they're looking at international trade markets and deciding when to release the sweet potato. I mean, highly sophisticated financial decisions they were making. But at the end of the day, they were related to their land, and that's what this was all about. I mean, to say it was a spiritual relationship doesn't, I don't know what word captures it, but it was something very special, and that sometimes you think about farmers exploiting the land, and that happens with the big factory farms. But in these cases, you find farmers want to be at peace with their land. And I heard it many times that they wanted to turn the land over in better condition to their children than it was turned over to them. So it's obvious from emotionally the way you're talking about it and the way I'm talking about it, something very special is occurring here. How do you communicate that in a video, especially to children?
Well, I think for us, we always lead with the enthusiasm that we have, but then also trying to tease out the enthusiasm that the farmers have themselves, because some of them are not used to being on camera and certainly not on a YouTube Kids show. But once we ask the right questions and probe a little bit for an example, we just shot with them last week and we asked for students that we work with around the country to submit questions. And one of the questions was, does the farmer talk to his apples? And we asked one of the farmers that, and he lit up, and you just saw all of a sudden that passion that he really does have for his apples. And I think the more that we can bring that out of the farmers, show kids and families how passionate and excited they are about the fruit, that hopefully that will get the kids excited as well.
So the farmer talking to an apple when it falls from 30 feet on his head.
They're pretty sturdy up there, honestly. And I think another way to kind of communicate the care is to show how much work goes into it. Because literally, this was informative for us just because going from the blossoms, they go through and prune by hand and hand select it because there are so many variables involved. And what we found is the confluence of this incredible intergenerational wisdom and technique and craft that has been passed down and honed. Also kind of meeting with in the packaging facility, the technology there is honestly mind-blowing. And I think it's only getting more and more advanced. We shot an episode at a dairy farm, and one of the farms we visited recently had AI milkers, AI robotic milkers. And we're like, oh, does this make it so that the cows have a different and negative relationship with you since they're used to robots? And they're like, actually, it's the exact opposite. Now they're much friendlier with us because they know that we're not coming to do anything, we're not coming to milk them. It's incredible to see. And I recommend everybody getting a chance to go visit a farm and see where their food is made because it changes your relationship with how you eat, I think.
I can see why your offerings to children and their parents would be so popular because both you guys have this neat sense of wonder. You learn, you're out there, you're meeting interesting people, and these interactions sound like they mean the world to you. And of course, the wonder is something amazing that children have naturally. And if that can keep invigorated for as many years as possible, hooray.
Yeah. You asked earlier whether you should refer to us as Captain and Cat or Kevin and Jordy. And I think the truth is they become one and the same. I mean, when we go out there and we film these episodes, sure, we're in costumes and we're wearing bright colors. But for the most part, it's just us, Kevin and Jordan. They're excited to learn about whatever we're talking about or talking to. And there is a natural curiosity that I think we both have. We're not acting, we're not faking it. To go to these farms and see down one row of apples, they're harvesting hundreds of thousands of apples, and they've got to get it done within a matter of weeks. You don't have to pretend. That's just impressive. That is just impressive to us.
And the world is cool out there, honestly. I don't put on anything. We actually pride ourselves on not talking to kids in a silly voice. I talk in our episodes exactly the way I'm talking now. We don't dumb down our content, and we love having kind of complex words and complex ideas, which we then take upon ourselves to translate into simile that helps our audience understand. So we're processing all this in real time. And Kevin, I come from an educational background. I'm a teacher at heart, and I've always have been. And so it's just amazing to be able to receive and absorb this information and at the same time relate it to an audience that we believe will catch up with us if we use the right words.
Tell me how you remain optimistic. So let's talk about kids and food. So the average child is exposed to tens of thousands of messages over a period of time that are mainly for unhealthy food. They're being given food in schools and elsewhere that is engineered to hijack the brain chemistry to keep them coming back for more. Tony the Tiger is not on plain cornflakes, and the Trix Rabbit is not on an unsugared cereal. And you can go on and on. They're obviously exposed to a very tough environment. Are you optimistic that can get turned around?
I'm optimistic just based on what we've seen with what we're doing with healthy foods and produce. I think we are trying to, in some sense, be the Tony Tiger of apples, right? We want to be there going, hey, apples are really exciting because they're healthy and they're good for you and they're sweet. And if we can get kids excited about it, we feel like we've done our part. And what we've seen by this classroom program, we're working with classrooms around the country where we're sending in our content, but we're also sending apples with the help of Sugar Bee. And then the kids and the teachers have been filming videos and sending it to us about how excited they are to eat apples. And I think kids are wonderful. I have 2 of them of my own, and they will get excited about what you get excited about as an adult. So if you say apples are the coolest, most fun thing I've seen, they get excited about it too, and they want to learn, and they want to share, and they want to talk about it.
There's also a really cool, I think, trend that's happening within the produce industry, which we've noticed. And we've noticed that since we've gotten in, which is that it's not enough to just be on the shelf anymore. You want to have a branding, and you want to have a logo, and you want to have a messaging, and you want to have connotations around your brand. And so I think produce companies are starting to catch up and use a lot of the same marketing tactics and strategies that kind of junk food was using for a long time. And you know what I always say? It's this. If you actually take the time to bite into an apple and really enjoy it, there's nothing sweeter and more nuance, in my opinion, than that. I think the more we can change the relationship with how and when we eat, the more we'll start to appreciate food that's of a different quality. And I think bringing attention to that, we're obviously swinging since probably the 1950s and maybe even earlier than that, in terms of just mindless, quick-to-go eating. But I think you'd see that we're changing the way that we think about how and when we eat. And I think that will favor the swing back towards it. And that's why, honestly, I think we're just optimistic people no matter what. If we went out there and did a despairing series about healthy foods, then that's not going to work, But we love what we do and we really believe in it. So that's our cause for hope.
You mentioned interacting with classrooms. So you could just post your material out there and not get involved with actual children and actual classrooms. Why the decision to do that? And tell us how that works. How do you interact with classrooms? And are teachers responsive? What kind of reaction are you getting?
Well, this actually came out of a conversation we had with the people at Sugar Bee. They said, we would love to get into classrooms to teach kids about healthy foods. We've been asked before to send our apples to classrooms, but we just don't know what to do or how to do that necessarily. And so we took it upon ourselves to start reaching out to teachers one by one on email, Instagram, TikTok, and say, hey, we have this healthy food episode, and we're going to create a worksheet for kids so they learn how apples are grown. And Sugar Bee has generously said that they will send a bag of apples to every classroom that wants to participate in this. And we didn't know how teachers were going to react, if they had the time for that or interest. And the response was overwhelmingly, yes, please, and thank you. I think teachers are looking for new lesson plans, interactive lesson plans, and obviously want to encourage kids to be eating healthy. And the fact that we can facilitate this to hundreds of classrooms around the country, it was a win for all sides, really. And then we didn't ever ask anybody to film anything or post anything on social media. That's not part of the program, but they took it upon themselves to film videos of either the teachers or the kids thanking us, thanking Sugar Bee for doing this. It was more rewarding than I think we even realized going into this.
There have been people who reached out to us and got back to us and they're like, we just want you to know somebody's offering us a scam of free apples using your name. And we're like, actually, it's not a scam, that's a real thing. And I think we all see a huge opportunity. And one of our guiding philosophies and what we've realized is this. At home, you're very set in your ways and you've created your habits around eating. And it's very hard at that point to disrupt it because at home, you're either rebelling against your parents, you're set in your ways, you're not willing to try anything. And that comes a position or a place where you kind of dig your heels into the ground and say, this is what I like and that's it. But in school, we found that everybody is so open to trying new things. I remember growing up, I would just, anything that they put out at snack for me, I would eat, and because it was a nice break from being in school, And so we think that hitting them in this environment is actually much more effective even than hitting them at home with this. And so if we're looking to create lasting habits and changing the narrative around these healthy foods, the last thing we want to do is make it feel like you should eat this. Because the second someone tells you what you should do, that becomes the last thing in the world you want to do.
Can you give us a peek at what kind of foods you might be wanting to take on next?
Yeah.
Ooh, spoilers.
Yeah, we got some cool ones.
Well, we just released an episode this month about sun-kissed mandarins. So we went to mandarin farms in Central California. Same thing, we filmed with the farmers. It's also a co-op, all family farms. We went to the processing plant where they wash the mandarins and sort them and bag them and ship them. And so those mandarins are going to go out to classrooms in the next couple of weeks. And then
we got some really fun stuff planned. So basically our goal with this is honestly to create a healthy food / product of the month club that we would send into participating schools. It's going to be very, very seasonal because we kind of want to create that sense of it. And luckily, we've got a lot of different brands signed on already. Our summer is looking pretty busy, which is a blessing for us and really a blessing for the kids that we hope will be learning about this and receiving new foods.
To like the idea of eating something sweet like an apple or mandarins, what about things like broccoli and cauliflower and Brussels sprouts and asparagus? Will you turn your attention to those at some point?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're up for the challenge. I know from my own experience with my 5-year-old, if you dip anything in ranch, they'll like it.
Yeah. That's
or deep fry it.
Right. But it's a pairing issue. You know what I mean? And it's a context issue. So it's the way you eat it. So raw broccoli is probably not your gateway broccoli. You know what I mean? But you can always find different ways, whether or not it's incorporating it into a smoothie, incorporating it into a sandwich, or anything like that. It's kind of a gateway thing. And there's also a cool thing we're doing. So for example, we're talking to a potato company. We don't want teachers to have to go home and make mashed potatoes. right? Because that's a barrier to entry and that's kind of a pain. But what we found is a little workaround with a few of these is like, oh, there's an opportunity to send potatoes into classrooms and have them grow their own potato and get a sense of how it goes. So it's not only about trying the food, because honestly, nothing has given me more appreciation for blackberries than trying to grow blackberries myself. You know, and so being part of the process and realizing, wow, the stuff that we're getting is remarkable and remarkably effective and really delicious and gigantic, and the quantity of it is mind-blowing. So just there's so many different angles that we're getting kids into the idea of farming and getting their hands dirty, and that's stuff that I feel like is really, really missing from modern society.
So your messaging is focusing on how delicious these foods can be, how interesting their story is, who grew them, where it came from, and things like that. Is part of the messaging what these foods do for you? I mean, that they can make you run faster, jump higher, whatever. I mean, is there a functional part of what you're trying to communicate?
Yes, absolutely. We try to say it gives you superpowers. And then with each food that we're working with, we do get into the science and try to present it in a way that's appropriate for young kids. But getting into even what flavonoids are in an apple, we just did a whole segment of that.
Yeah.
And all the nutritious benefits. We've partnered with nutritionists. We were just filming with one in Washington to try to expose kids to the ideas that there are inside of an apple all of these natural vitamins and things that can help them. And we've even been doing fiber. Now, trying to present fiber in a way that doesn't say poop.
But we've started saying poop on our show, by the way. But we're like, you know what? We can say it as long as it's an academic context, you know?
Yeah, yes, exactly. We find the way to toe the line, and quite honestly, kids will lean in if they hear something that makes them giggle a little bit. But understanding, I mean, even for me as a grown adult, understanding that apples are a good way to clean out your digestive system, that fiber is good for that. It's even a good reminder for me at my age to be like, oh yeah, if I'm feeling a little bit of indigestion, maybe I need some more fiber.
And a cool thing we also did on our Sunkissed episode, Captain and I actually dressed up as these ridiculous California surfer bro characters named Sunny Sunkissed and Manny Mandarin. And the idea was that we were talking about why it's a perfect snack for surfing. But in the same time, we're also giving kind of the sugar pill treatment, which is like we're doing these ridiculous characters, but at the same time, we're actually providing information about why they're so healthy for you. We're doing one about whey where Kevin and I are going to go and hijack LA Fitness and as these muscle bros and talk about why whey protein is so rich in protein and calcium and stuff like that. So we're always evolving and each episode ends up being different. But the one thing that we found is like the story that we can tell of these is really infinite.
Will there be any part of your messaging that will talk about foods kids might eat less of?
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you're focusing very positively
Yeah.
and optimistic. So the answer to this could very well be no, because it just becomes complicated. But you've got lots of kids eating sugared cereals and drinking sugared beverages and things like that. I'm just wondering if that's part of the picture. It needn't be, but I'm wondering if it is.
I think up until now, our thought has been if we can try to get them equally or more excited about the healthy options, hopefully that's enough to sway them in that direction. And honestly, as a parent, I think just giving kids the idea of getting excited about produce, that they go home to their parents, and then maybe the parent's job is just a little bit easier. Because I'm faced with that every day when my daughter says she wants a snack and she wants candy. And I'm trying to say, no, how about this apple over here? If we can be on Team Apple, if we can be the helper to the parents that's encouraging the kids to eat a little healthier, I think that we've done our job there. Yeah.
I think it's never about us wanting to disparage or discourage or make anybody feel bad about their habits, because I think a lot of the problem around our eating habits in this country is that there's a lot of shame involved in it. And so you're not only getting a dose of those unhealthy foods that kind of give a quick release of dopamine or whatever, it tricks your body into thinking. It's also you're getting a little dose of that shame. And the last thing we ever want to do is to turn into police, and policing each other. Nobody wants to take advice from the police, and nobody wants to feel disparaged or talked down to. So it's interesting. We never really kind of thought about it. And obviously we just want to keep in an entertaining and enticing picture rather than any sort of daunting. Because when you get into the facts of some of those unhealthy foods, it can really seem a little bleak.
Well,
And
and
it is.
making foods seem like fun and having interesting characters associated with them is something the food industry has done successfully forever. So it makes perfect sense to do that, but attach these things to the healthy choices.
Yeah. Let's use their tricks for good. Lord knows we're steeped in them,
Yeah.
so let's wield that as a cause and weapon for good. And I think that's what we do.
We've also been learning about the history a little bit of the produce business, and how for so long these companies looked at their products as commodities, right? It wasn't necessarily sugar bee apple. It was, we're a company that sells apples. We're trying to be in as many grocery stores as you can, which I understand, that makes sense. But I think what probably was lost in the process was, if you're just a commodity and every apple is just a different red delicious or golden delicious, you're losing that opportunity to put a fun character behind it. And I think you're seeing now a lot more of these even different produce companies coming together, like avocados from Mexico, I think is a great example that you see a lot more of their branding and their advertising, where all of these avocado growers are coming together and saying, let's just market avocados. Let's get people excited about the food itself.
I think there's also going to be an interesting trend away from going to physical grocery stores that will only continue in the future. So I think if we're ordering online from, let's say, a whatever warehouse, Amazon warehouse, right? And they have 20 different apples there. It's really important to have brand loyalty. And that becomes things that they're having to consider now. And we just happened to release this series at a really nice time, which they're all trying to do that. Because probably 10 years ago, they would have been like, we don't listen to apples. They sell themselves. But now you're dealing with so much competition and so much branding and so many name things that it can be overwhelming. And at a certain point, you might just disconnect unless you know what you're looking for.
What I found that historically is that the people selling these foods were pretty splintered. There would be a plum association and an apple association and a pear association, and they're loosely grouped into a broader produce organization and things like that. But those organizations tended not to be very well funded or have a lot of clout because they were so splintered. I wonder if that's beginning to change. Did you see any evidence that the industry as a whole is beginning to unite effectively?
It's funny. Just on Instagram alone, there are like places that it's like, we just love cranberries so much. And then it's like cranberries from Wisconsin. That has their own little thing, And like, I feel like there hasn't been that coalescence. And I feel like also there's probably some sort of advocacy group. I think it's largely statewide policy as well, from what I've gleaned off of this. They're each focusing on their own state policy, and then maybe there's a national organization. And this, honestly, we are just scratching the surface on this, because this is more complex than we could have ever imagined. And we are learning every single day in our talks. And we love to just go out to lunch with the people who are on the business side and straddling the business and the farming side. And the things that they are grappling with are fascinating, because all these companies ship internationally. So you're subject to international law, like weather. There are so many different variables that we're like, I've never felt so connected to the weather in my life.
Well, before talking to you guys, I was having a day of my ordinary level of hopefulness, but it's gone way the heck up now. And you make me feel really optimistic about the future, and I love the work you're doing. And boy, you could have no two more perfect people doing this kind of thing. And also, I wanted to say I've done hundreds of podcasts, and I think this is the first one ever where I haven't asked a single question from the prearranged script. It just so naturally.
That's how we do this series too. Farmers will be like, can you send us a script of what we got? And we'll send them just the most generic questions of all time. But the things we end up talking about, conversation that grows naturally, in my opinion, is by far the best one. So here we are, just talking like old friends,
Yeah, and it's much more human that way. And that's what registers with people. So in any event, thank you for the good work you do. And I just hope this incredible visibility you have just continues to grow and that more and more kids are exposed to it. So congratulations. Thank you. Every good thing I can say, I would like to pass along.
And right back at you, Kelly. We are really, really cheering on your mission, and we're glad to be a part of it.
Good, good. Thanks so much.
Amazing.
So our guests today are Captain and Cats, Kevin Hoban and Jordy Simkovic. Look up their show, Captain and Cat, on YouTube Kids. And thank you for listening. Thank you also to our producer, Deborah Hill, for her excellent work. This is Kelly Brownell.
Thank you for listening to the Leading Voices in Food podcast. This program is an educational series produced by Duke University's World Food Policy Center with the goal of promoting productive conversation for food systems change. If you would like to subscribe, you can find it on Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, or your favorite podcast app. Transcripts are also available on the website of the Duke World Food Policy Center.